From the CISO Series, it's cybersecurity headlines.
Huge AT&T breach impacts all customers and has snowflake connections. 10 billion stolen passwords exposed, and the Supreme Court and Senate both make cybersecurity regulations trickier. These are some of the stories that my colleagues and I have selected from this past week's cybersecurity headlines. We've curated them like a fine wardrobe. We have things that match, things that clash, and things to stand out. And now we're ready for some insight, opinion, and expertise from our guest, Andrew Cannata, the CISO over at Primo Water. Andrew, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, before we jump into the news, and there are some meaty topics we need to get into, I want to spend a second to thank our sponsor for today, Entro Security. Reclaim control over your non-human identities. Remember, you can join us on YouTube Live. To do so, go to CISOSeries.com, hit the events dropdown, and look for the Cybersecurity Headlines Week in Review image. You can click on it. All of the typical interaction paradigms you've expect from the internet and web browsers apply on our site. No surprises there. You can also just look for us on YouTube, look for the CISO Series account, and follow us there as well. And remember, we want to see your comments in our chat. If you are watching live, we want to know what is happening in your mind, how you're reacting to these stories, what questions you have. Maybe even if you disagree with some of our takes, we would love to hear it. Love to see that. That's why you gotta join us live. We've got about 20 minutes though, so let's just jump right into it. First up here, huge AT&T breach impacts all customers and has snowflake connections. Just breaking this morning, AT&T said today that almost all of its wireless subscribers were exposed in a massive hack that occurred between April 14th and April 25th, resulting in exfiltration of files containing records of customer call and text interactions in May 2022 through October of that same year. The breach does not contain PII, but instead contains records of phone numbers used to make calls and text messages. AT&T added that the data was illegally downloaded from our workspace on a third-party cloud platform, and experts are speculating Snowflake is the culprit there. So, Andrew, even though PII was not released, experts are already pointing out just how easy it is to connect people with their phone numbers. And secondly, the expectation that this is yet another chapter in the Snowflake saga. I don't know about you, not a great way to start my weekend here. As a CISO, I'm curious, what are your thoughts when you read a story of this kind of scale and magnitude?
Yeah, so look, I don't think this is the last time we're going to hear about Snowflake causing issues. In fact, I think we're not even halfway through that. I do think that there's going to be additional fallout from it. And even though allegedly there was no PII that was exposed, it does bring the light of the importance of third-party risk management. Understanding what your vendors are doing, and more importantly, what your vendors are doing is critical in your organization. And if you're an AT&T customer, well, you can expect a significant amount of smishing and social engineering in the coming months. But frankly, I don't think we've heard the end of this. And as you said, Rich, this is certainly developing. So we'll know more in the coming weeks, months, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, and Max Tronic in our chat is saying the NSA is salivating
sure.
At this. Well, it does remind me. I mean, this is very much like a pen register, right? Of like, this is like something you would get a warrant for and tap a cell tower or something like that to get this information. Except it's for every AT&T customer over the course of it, over a significant span of time. I just think in terms of all like the social graphs you could put together in terms of like, who is your trusted contacts? Who are you always contacting? Now, a lot of that's already out there. Like, I'm not saying this is like necessarily all net new information, but yeah, to your point, the smishing and stuff like that, that's just going to happen is, I don't know if the old 2 years of credit monitoring salve is going to solve any of these problems, right?
I don't think so. I really don't. And I certainly believe that it is going to continue to, the story is going to continue to evolve. With that many data records, if you're the bad guys, how do you figure out what you want to take advantage of? So
yeah, I mean, the good thing is it's an embarrassment of riches. So you're probably going to be the needle in a haystack. So that's great. That's the positive silver lining, folks.
Silver lining.
All right, next up here, kind of a double story here. Supreme Court and Senate both make cybersecurity regulations even more difficult to maintain. So we've combined these two. First up, the Supreme Court late last month, overturned what is now known as the Chevron Doctrine, which means courts no longer need to defer to federal agencies' expertise on regulatory matters, including those related to cybersecurity. There is now the existing defense that's on the books essentially has much less gives the federal agencies much less latitude. It's a weaker precedent, from what I understand. This means that cybersecurity regulations issued by agencies like the SEC, FDA, and DHS could face increased legal challenges and potential invalidation by courts and appeals from well-funded companies. At the same time, the Senate has introduced bipartisan legislation called the Streamlining Federal Cybersecurity Regulations Act, which would create a committee tasked with harmonizing the overly burdensome, inconsistent, or contradictory cybersecurity requirements currently imposed on companies by federal regulatory agencies. And we had seen executive orders to this effect calling for this legislation. So we kind of knew this was on the way. But Andrew, what are your thoughts, I guess, on this? On the one hand, we have, I guess, a weakening of centralized authority, but a lot of stuff to then be sorted out by the courts. On the other side, the at least legislatively trying to streamline a lot of, this bevy of requirements we've seen in the last couple of years.
Yeah. So overall, I do think regulation is good. I think the challenge, of course, is ensuring that the regulation is achievable, that it is not contradictory of other standards that are out there. And I do believe it's necessary to protect both the consumers and those organizations that deal with those consumers. What I do like the idea of streamlining. It's going to be one of those days. Sorry, Rich. But I do have concern as a CISO in a publicly traded organization, right? The additional regulations could be cumbersome. Overall, while the Streamlining Federal Cybersecurity Regulations Act, and I had to write it down so I didn't stumble over it, has the potential to significantly improve the regulatory landscape, I think careful implementation and ongoing oversight will be crucial to address its potential downsides and ensure that it enhances and not detracts cybersecurity as a whole.
Yeah, I guess when I see these two kind of interplaying, my concern, I guess, would be, we've seen a lot of high-profile executive orders or legislation or regulatory agencies, coming down with mandates. We're all scrambling to then come into compliance with them. Hopefully, this Senate bill, cleans everything up, gives you a cleaner line to follow. But then that gets undermined by a much more the idea that these judicial rulings could overturn a lot of these kind of at the drop of a hat. We don't know when those are going to occur and how they're going to occur. And I'm just wondering, so even if we streamline, we succeed in that, it could lead to a much more quickly changing landscape, just depending on how deep people's pockets are for lawsuits.
Right. Keep the lawyers busy. That's all I hear.
So lawyers, again, silver lining. Lawyers, turns out, great day for you. So thanks, lawyers. Yeah. All right. Before we move on to our next story, we have to spend a few moments now with our sponsor, CISO Security. What are you doing to secure your company's non-human identities? Vaults and scanners are helpful, but they don't give the context for where your secrets are, how they're being used, or when it's time to remove or rotate them. The Entro platform provides automated lifecycle management and seamless integration, ensuring comprehensive security and compliance through a unified and easy-to-use interface. Learn more at entro.security. That's ENTRO.security. All right, our next story here. U.S. disrupts Russian AI-powered disinformation bot farm. That's kind of like a buzzword bingo there for cybersecurity here. Right. A joint international law enforcement operation led by the U.S. Justice Department has seized email servers, domains, and nearly 1,000 X accounts controlled by a large Russian bot farm. The bots have leveraged AI-enabled software called Meliorator to create authentic-looking social media accounts, posing as people worldwide to propagate false narratives since 2022. The bot farm was managed by the deputy editor-in-chief of the Russian news organization Russia Today, you may have heard of it as RT, and an officer of Russia's Federal Security Service, FSB. So, Andrew, in terms of tactics, not really new here, bot farms spreading disinformation. We've seen this for years now. But as a CISO, How do you help your organization understand and assess AI-generated false narratives we're seeing that can be created at scale with things like deepfakes and generative AI? I guess, and what advice would you have for other CISOs in this regard?
Well, first of all, I love the disruption of the bot farm by the feds. 2 thumbs up for them, right? But to answer the question, education, education, education. Informing your organizations about the risks, looking for a couple of key things in the video that you would identify as definitely not real. That's just commonplace now. And thankfully, you don't have to educate your user base on this because it's bombarded in the news media, right? You can't turn on a news station, no matter what side you're looking at, without somebody referencing deepfakes in some way, shape, or form. So for me, I think one of the things that we do here in our world is we have a weekly intel brief. We communicate out to the organization and give specific steps and hints on looking for things that don't make sense in recordings, and then you put additional training in place. So if your CFO calls and says you need to wire $25 million out, you probably need to validate those things are appropriate compared to what was happening before. So, and for the other CISOs, like we're all by nature skeptics. So it's easy for the other CISOs, right? We trust nobody. Don't verify. Just don't trust it.
If you're in that role, you should already have that mindset.
Exactly.
I'm curious from your perspective. Now, you mentioned it's hard to avoid these kinds of stories. They're in the news all the time.
Yeah.
Are you seeing then from, as you're reporting on these types of stories that these are being over-indexed maybe by people outside of cybersecurity in terms of the threat they pose, or is it net positive that we're at least having the conversation?
I think it's net positive to have the conversation. What I don't want to happen on a larger scale is that people just stop believing anything, right? Other than us hardened, grizzled CISOs that are just horrible people inside. But the rest of the world needs to pay attention to it and learn from it, and not take the fake news on your Facebook feed or whatever social media platform of choice as gospel, right? Do some independent research, validate, educate. So
don't hate, validate. I think that's
exactly
the lesson of today. All right, next up here, Fin7 rides again. This came, I saw this on Brian Krebs's blog. He recently highlighted new research on the resurgence of the sophisticated APT group based in Russia and ties to Alpha V/Black Cat. A Washington U.S. attorney declared the group no more in what was seemingly a premature action in May 2023. Never a good thing to do, because the group seems to be alive and well and using thousands of hosts to spoof high-profile brands for spear phishing attacks, as well as typo squatting attacks, targeting free software. Pretty typical stuff for typo squatting. Andrew, sometimes the stories in a week, they just gel together like some sort of insidious amoeba. And this week, it appears to be, maybe regulators approaching cybersecurity with assumptions that everything will be fine, even if maybe we lower our guard some. We're seeing Fin7 upholding an age-old tradition of cybercrime organizations being not quite as dead as we think they are. They're quite alive. They feel happy. What's your take on this?
Yeah, so I think the resurgence of Fin7 is a stark reminder that no matter how hard agencies go at these organizations and how bad they're beaten down, the authorities never get 100% of the threat actors associated with the group. It would be awesome if they could roll every one of them up and lock them away, but it's a money-making scheme, right? So these threat actors are going to continue to, well, if they're not arrested, they're going to continue to operate. They'll move to another group, or they'll just lie low and come up a few weeks, months, year later, or they'll remerge with a really cool name.
Yeah, well, that's the theme with ransomware orgs, right? Is you do the rebrand, but then the back end's basically all the same, right?
Oh yeah, you have to have a cool random name generator too in your organization to help come up with your name. Fin7's not as cool of a name, but it's still.
Yeah. I liked Fin2 Fin Furious. That was my preferred Fin backup name. All right, we're gonna finish off here with record-breaking 10 billion stolen passwords exposed. This appears to be the latest collection of stolen and leaked credentials ever seen on the Crime Marketplace breach forums. However, there are some doubts about the value of the data, with some sources like Forbes stating much of that data is being described as garbage and unlikely to be useful to any adversary. Cyber News researchers responded to these claims, emphasizing their goal is to make the public aware of potential risks rather than verifying an entire data set or facilitating its use by threat actors. So I guess kudos to Cyber News for taking making this a cautionary tale rather than saying this is canonically 10 billion novel records or something like that. We've seen this kind of repackaging, right, of leaked data, passwords, authentication, credentials, and that kind of stuff. But Andrew, I'm curious, do you feel such a warning stance helps, or might it contribute to alert fatigue? We just see the number gets bigger, but what does it mean for us?
Yeah, no. So a couple things. First off, I do think it helps. And the way this one was done was an awareness. It wasn't the sky is falling.
Mm-hmm.
And to be clear, look, if there's 10 billion usernames and passwords out there, most of them aged out, hopefully. The reality is, and we see it all the time, people use the same password everywhere. So if you are one of those individuals that do use the same password everywhere, shame on you. And I think you may actually be, you may get something taken advantage of as a result of this data dump. But that said, I think it's an appropriate cautionary tale to ensure that your passwords are appropriate, not weak, and they are changed on a regular basis and won't be used. And know that if you don't have strong passwords, they will be used against you at a later date in some way, shape, or form.
Well, and also, I guess this will be my PSA to companies out there, organizations out there, with this kind of data set, and knowing that we can tell people to use different passwords for different sites, so we're blue in the face, and some people are just never going to do that or do it consistently. Have some sort of response for when you get hit with a typo squatting attack that isn't, here's our users, they are to blame, i.e. 23andMe or something like that. So you also need to, one, have just a better story to say when you get hit by something like that. And two, plan for that, like make that part of, whether that's rolling out MFA, whether that's adopting passkeys, that kind of stuff. Either way, companies, this is out there too, right? This is on everybody to try and do better.
Yes.
And CCL in the chat says is putting out his password here. Correct horse battery staple. I think using the XKCD method for doing that. That sounds about right to me, CCL. Please don't look at my password manager, though. That's not very nice of you to do that. So I appreciate that.
Oh, that's your password as well.
What? Oh, no. Yeah, gosh. We're going to take that in post. So CCL, David, and Maxtronic, everybody in the chat, just be cool. Please don't hack me. All right, before we get out of here, Andrew, was there any story this week that was a big thumbs up, made you happy to see, or made your eyes roll to the back of your head, something you reacted strongly to?
Well, so I think the AT&T one, the one that just came out, I'm still kind of, taking it all in, but I think this is one that I am not surprised is going to continue to grow legs, and we'll hear more about it over the next several weeks. And frankly, I think we're going to hear more about Snowflake fallout as a whole. But I think that was the most recent / my thumbs up one. So.
All right. Yeah. And we will definitely be keeping an eye on whether it's AT&T or more Snowflake fallout for sure. Make sure you are listening to Cybersecurity Headlines to stay up on that. Lots of things to keep track of. But Andrew Cannata, the CISO over at Primo Water, thank you so much for your time. Where can people find you online if they want to keep seeing what you're putting out there in the world?
LinkedIn is the only place that I post.
Fantastic. Make sure you are following Andrew on there. You can follow me too, Rich Straffolino. I'm on LinkedIn. Sure, why not? I'll throw that out there. And thanks also to our sponsor for today, Entro Security. Reclaim control of your non-human identities. Visit them at entrosecurity.com/threats. That's ENTRO security.com/threats. And thanks to everybody in our audience today, including, I guess, my password bro now, CCL. Appreciate that. Can't always get every single comment up on the screen, but we deeply appreciate everybody being here, participating, and however you see fit. Be sure to join us again next Friday for more live stream fun, starting with Super Cyber Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Our topic will be hacking SOC automation, an hour of critical thinking, all about something my script didn't come by. So it'll be an hour of critical thinking about how the line of what we can automate is changing. Technology is a wonderful thing. This then we'll be at 3:30 p.m. We'll be doing another edition of our Week in Review, and we have our scheduled guest, Adam Alano, VP Enterprise Cybersecurity over at PayPal. You may have heard of them. In the meantime, you can still get your daily news fix every single day through cybersecurity headlines. Give us about 6 minutes. We'll get you all caught up. Andrew, thanks once again for being on. This was a fantastic time, and we'll have to on you again real soon.
Thank you very much. I had a blast.
All right. Until the next time we meet, I'm Rich Straffolino, reminding you to have a super sparkly day.
Cybersecurity headlines are available every weekday. Head to CISOSeries.com for the full stories behind the headlines.